Imagine standing right in the middle of a really bustling, heavy-duty workshop. Like, just take a deep breath.
Oh, you can almost smell it.
Right. You are immediately hit by this incredibly vivid, sharp tang of cutting oil that's just suspended in the air.
Yeah, the distinct metallic smell.
Exactly. And beneath that, there's this deep, grounding, almost comforting scent of old timber and sawdust. And the soundtrack to all of this, it's the aggressive, blinding hiss of welding torches, punctuated by this rhythmic, ringing clink-clink of heavy steel spanners just hitting an iron workbench.
Intense.
It is, yeah. And you are standing in the domain of a burly mechanical engineer who goes by the name Papa Joe.
It is such a profoundly sensory space to step into. I mean, we're bringing you into this specific environment today because the man who owns it has, he's kind of accidentally created a masterclass in human psychology.
Yeah, masquerading as an industrial art studio.
Exactly, masquerading as a studio. We're doing a deep dive today into a really deeply personal document we've been reviewing, and it's titled The Flight of the Dragonfly.
Such a great title.
It really is. And our mission here is to understand how this Durbanville farm boy, a guy who spent his teenage years tearing apart and rebuilding old VW Beetle and Ford Escort engines.
As you do.
Right, how he's taking discarded, completely rusted industrial scrap and transforming it into high-end modern luxury, a style they actually call stark punk.
Okay, let's unpack this because right away we run into this really brilliant contradiction in the source text.
Oh, the motif.
Yes. So you walk into this chaotic, heavy metal environment, past towering shelves of salvaged mechanical history, right? Gears, valves, heavy pressure gauges.
Heavy industrial stuff.
Exactly. And the recurring motif stamped onto their finest pieces is a dragonfly.
Right.
Like a delicate little insect. It's kind of like seeing a delicate butterfly tattooed on the neck of a heavyweight boxer.
That's a great way to put it.
It completely catches you off guard. So I have to ask, why is a fragile-looking symbol the anchor for a guy whose entire life is just about cold, unyielding steel?
Well, see, it looks fragile to us, but if you look at the engineering of nature itself, I mean, the dragonfly is the ultimate survivor.
Okay.
Papa Joe understands this from a purely structural perspective. They've been flying across this planet for over 300 million years.
Wait, really? 300 million?
Yeah, they predated the dinosaurs. They survived global mass extinctions.
Yeah.
I mean, they outlasted multiple ice ages.
Wow. Which means their physical design is almost, well, impossibly perfect. They aren't just sort of floating around on the breeze.
Far from it. From an aerodynamic standpoint, they are an absolute marvel. They can actually control each of their four wings independently.
That's wild.
Yeah, they can fly backwards, hover in place like a tiny helicopter, and track tiny prey while moving at just incredible speeds.
Jeez.
So when a dragonfly darts across a garden, it's not merely flying. It is the physical embodiment of a design that is capable of overcoming incredibly hostile changing conditions.
Right, right.
And for Papa Joe, that ability to endure an ice age, that is exactly what he sees in the metal he works with.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. He's looking at objects that have faced their own brutal winters.
Exactly.
I mean, we're talking about decades of abandonment, thick layers of rust, missing gears, just complete structural neglect in a scrapyard somewhere.
And what's fascinating here is where a normal person walks through a scrapyard and just sees an unrecoverable pile of junk, Papa Joe is looking through the analytical eyes of a mechanical engineer. He sees an object that survived its own ice age, just waiting to find its wings again. He recognizes the inherent strength of those raw materials and views it almost as a process of, like, reverse resilience.
Yeah, and that concept of resilience takes on a much heavier weight when you read further into the document.
It really does.
It's not just a cute, clever metaphor for upcycling metal. The text shares that Papa Joe and his wife, who is actually the co-creator in this business, they are currently walking with their son through a devastating cancer diagnosis.
Yeah. It's the kind of news that, as the author puts it, it just stops your breath in your throat.
Yeah.
It's this heavy, suffocating fog that threatens to quiet the loudest machines in that workshop. It tests the very concept of resilience in just the most painful, visceral way imaginable.
But instead of shutting down the workshop, they write that they are applying the unyielding will of the dragonfly to their family's battle. They are just refusing to let the storm dictate their ending. It really makes me think of the actual process of annealing metal in a forge.
Oh, that is a very apt comparison. How so?
Well, so when you anneal steel, you don't just heat it up to shape it. You bring it to an incredibly high stressful temperature, but but then you control the cooling process very deliberately.
Right, you can't just let it cool on its own.
Exactly. That deliberate process actually alters the microstructure of the metal. It removes the internal stresses that cause brittleness. And the end result is a piece of steel that is vastly tougher and way more workable than it was before the fire.
I love that.
Yeah, it feels like the physical work in the shop is serving as this tangible, daily reflection of the family's emotional survival. They are in the fire, but they are focused on emerging stronger.
That physical grounding is honestly the true heartbeat of this document. It isn't just about restoring metal. It's about holding on to hope.
Right.
Just like that tiny creature that survived shifting worlds, they are choosing to stand tall against the hardship. And that philosophical mindset drastically changes how they approach the actual practical restoration work happening on the benches.
So let's get into the mechanics of that work, because it's fascinating. Papa Joe's bread and butter, like his primary love, is pure restoration.
Yeah.
Taking a late 19th century coffee grinder or a classic, his master's voice gramophone, and meticulously bringing it back to its original state.
Which takes incredible skill.
Totally. Figuring out the original mechanics, truing up the bearings, preserving the original patina. But the text introduces this hurdle. They call it the hard mechanical horizon.
Yeah, the hard mechanical horizon is such a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
This is the point where an antique arrives at the workshop, and its structural integrity is fundamentally compromised.
Right. It's too far gone.
Exactly. It's missing its proprietary core components, or maybe the metal itself is too fatigued to bear a load. It means it can never, ever fulfill its original function again.
Wow.
So it's a gramophone that will never spin a record, a coffee grinder that will never grind a single bean.
And in the standard commercial world, that is the end of the line.
Completely.
The object has lost its utility, so society deems it worthless and just sends it to the scrap heap. But Papa Joe refuses.
He does.
He gives these items what they call a beautiful retirement, basically this creative resurrection where a broken tool becomes a piece of art. I do have to play devil's advocate here, though.
Oh, go for it.
Isn't there a point where scrap is really just scrap? Like, to me, pure restoration is like learning to speak a dying historical language perfectly. It's vital preservation. But this beautiful retirement thing, taking a broken machine and forcing it to be a lamp or a table, it feels a bit like evolving that dead language into modern slang just so people keep using it.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
If I have a 1920s coffee grinder that's missing the burrs, doesn't putting a modern Edison bulb in it almost feel like an insult to the original engineer? Why not just let a broken machine die with dignity?
A lot of historical purists would actually agree with you.
Really?
Oh, yeah. There is an ongoing debate in the preservation world where some historians absolutely despise the upcycling trend because they argue it destroys the historical artifact forever.
Right.
Once you drill a hole in a 19th century casting to run a power cord, you can never undrill it. The artifact is gone.
Right. It goes from being a piece of history to just being like a quirky decoration.
Exactly. But Papa Joe's counter-argument, and really the philosophy of this whole workshop, is rooted in what they call material honesty.
Material honesty.
Yeah. We are talking about an era when things were built to outlive their creators. The raw materials used in 1910, the heavy cast iron, the solid brass, the high-carbon steel.
It's serious metal.
Right. It possesses an inherent metallurgical value and density that mass-produced modern items simply lack. If you throw that into a landfill just because it's missing a gear, you are wasting the incredible carbon footprint and labor that went into forging that material in the first place.
Ah, I see. So by giving it a beautiful retirement, you're arguing that the material itself deserves respect, even if the original function is entirely lost.
Exactly.
That actually raises a huge question for you, the listener. How do we currently treat items, or frankly, even people, that can no longer serve their strict original purpose?
It's a heavy thought.
Do we discard them, or do we recognize their inherent character and engineer a new way for them to carry weight?
And that is the core of their signature aesthetic, which they call stark punk. They are taking these retired materials and giving them a second life that honors that material honesty.
Which is a relief, because I have to admit, when I hear any variation of the word steampunk, my brain immediately goes to, like, cheap plastic goggles with plastic gears hot glued onto a foam top hat.
Oh, the convention costumes, yeah.
It feels like a theme park costume. And if you take a rusted farm wheel and just shove it in a sleek modern office, it usually looks like a piece of garbage the construction crew accidentally left behind.
Exactly.
So how does stark punk bridge that gap and avoid feeling like a cheap prop.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the difference comes down entirely to foundational engineering.
Okay.
True Stark Punk, at least as Papa Joe defines it, is a deeply nostalgic celebration of the Victorian and Industrial Revolutions, but it absolutely has to obey the laws of physics.
It has to work.
Right. It's not just buying cheap galvanized pipes from the hardware store and spray painting them brass. Papa Joe actually studied mechanical engineering at CPUT.
That's the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, right?
Yes.
Meaning he actually understands the science of flow, pressure, material stress, and weight distribution.
Exactly. Let's look at a practical example. Say you want to take an antique brass pressure gauge from a defunct South African railway steam engine and turn it into a wall-mounted lighting fixture.
Sounds cool.
It does. But that gauge wasn't designed to be a light. It was designed to withstand immense steam pressure, which means it is incredibly heavy. It might weigh 30 or 40 pounds.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you can't just drive a standard drywall anchor into a modern apartment wall and hang a 40-pound piece of solid brass on it.
You'd tear the wall down.
Yeah.
The sheer force and the moment arm, the lever effect of that weight pulling away from the wall, it would rip a standard screw right out of the gypsum.
Right?
So Papa Joe has to engineer structural steel backplates, calculate the load-bearing tolerances, and figure out how to anchor that piece so it is safe, functional, and visually seamless.
That is real engineering.
Yes, and because the items are rooted in real mechanical principles and installed with actual engineering mathematics, they inherently command respect. They aren't glued together. They are built to last another century.
That's incredible. Try to picture the aesthetic clash they are creating here.
Oh, it's stunning.
Imagine walking into a high-end corporate boardroom or a luxury home office. One wall is painted this deep, rich emerald green.
Very classy.
Yeah, the floors are dark, polished, reclaimed wood. And anchoring that entire sophisticated space is this massive, bespoke lighting fixture. Tucked into that sleek design is this heavy cast iron wheel from a forgotten farm implement, humming beneath the warm glow of a filament bulb.
And the mechanical beauty of the nuts and bolts is celebrated, not hidden away. It communicates permanence. It tells anyone who walks into that room that the owner values substance over trends.
Yeah. But here's where the document gets really interesting for me, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because behind all of the sophisticated heavy metal industrial art is a human process that sounds hilariously chaotic. They describe it as the spouse engineering dynamic.
Yes, it's a brilliant division of labor between the visionary and the executioner. You have the wife who walks into the workshop, looks at a pile of discarded historical elements that look like utter junk to anyone else, and she sees the magic. She's the one who will say, hey, Joe, what if we took this beautiful, broken, old, vintage porcelain teaware and turned it into a whimsical Alice in Wonderland lamp?
I just love this because everyone listening has this dynamic in their life, right? Whether it's at work or in a marriage.
Oh, 100%.
You have the idea person who lives up in the clouds and the execution person who lives in reality.
One who has to make it happen.
Right. The idea person says, let's make a porcelain teapot float and glow. And the execution person, poor Papa Joe, is standing there sweating, thinking, how on earth do I drill through 100-year-old delicate porcelain without shattering it into a million pieces?
Right.
And how do I hide modern electrical wiring inside custom copper piping?
He has to figure out the actual physical mechanics of her imagination. To drill that 100-year-old porcelain, he can't just use a standard masonry bit from the garage.
No, it would just explode.
It would. He has to use diamond-tipped core bits. He has to start the drill at a 45-degree angle to score the glaze without slipping, and then slowly, painfully bring it vertical.
And he'd have to use continuous water cooling while drilling, right?
Yes, exactly.
Otherwise, the friction heat would cause thermal shock and crack the antique right down the middle.
The heat would destroy it instantly. And then for the wiring, he isn't just stuffing cables into a straight tube.
Right.
To get thick braided electrical wire through a series of pressurized copper elbows, which have these really tight 90-degree turns, he has to use a flexible steel fish tape to carefully pull the wiring through the maze of pipe.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It is, especially because he has to do it without scripting the rubber insulation on the jacket interior edges.
It's just intense precision work, but, if she didn't push him with these wild ideas, the art wouldn't exist.
True.
If he didn't engineer the reality, her dream would just be a shattered teapot on the floor.
And that friction between imagination and physics is where the genius actually happens. And the document, traces the roots of this specific brand of stubborn problem solving back to their cultural DNA.
Yeah, they write with immense pride about South African ingenuity.
They cite some really incredible examples.
They do. Things like Pratley putty, which is an adhesive so strong it was literally used on the Apollo 11 moon landing,
Wow.
the world's first human heart transplant. And the Dolos, which is just a perfect example of this mindset.
The Dolos is such a fascinating piece of engineering.
Yeah, for those who don't know, a Dolos is a massive, complex, geometric block of concrete used to protect harbor walls. Instead of just building a solid flat wall to block the ocean, which the ocean will eventually just batter down, they designed these weird interlocking shapes that absorb and dissipate the wave energy. It's incredibly rugged, original thinking.
It's a cultural heritage built on a very specific mindset. It says, you see a hard problem, you refuse to back down, and you build an original solution.
You don't wait for someone else to fix it for you.
Exactly. Which feeds directly into the ultimate code of their workshop. The motto they literally live by is, "Only dead fish go with the flow."
Only dead fish go with the flow. That is such a striking motto.
It hits hard.
It does, because going with the flow is easy. Going with the flow means walking into a big box store and buying mass-produced, flat-packed particle board furniture that is mathematically designed with planned obsolescence.
Stuff meant to fall apart in 3 to 5 years.
Exactly.
And going with the flow is also looking at a piece of history and letting it rot into dust, just because figuring out how to drill the porcelain or anchor the brass is too hard.
Right.
This brings up a much deeper philosophical takeaway for the listener. Choosing bespoke, handcrafted industrial art, choosing to resurrect something that hit its mechanical horizon, it's a deliberate act of defiance against disposable culture.
It's saying that the objects we surround ourselves with carry real psychological weight. You aren't just decorating a room. You are making a definitive statement about your own character. You are signaling that you appreciate craftsmanship, material honesty, and things that are intentionally engineered to outlive you.
So let's pull all of these threads together.
Let's do it.
We started in this intensely sensory heavy metal workshop, smelling the cutting oil and the timber. We explored the 300-million-year-old aerodynamic perfection of the Dragonfly and how that survivor mirrors a family's unyielding, annealed resilience against a devastating cancer diagnosis.
Yeah. And we debated the hard mechanical horizon and why Papa Joe chooses the material honesty of a beautiful retirement over just sending historical metal to the scrap heap. We broke down the authentic load-bearing engineering required for Stark Punk and the brilliant friction of the spouse engineering dynamic, drilling the porcelain, pulling the wire, all fueled by that defiant South African spirit of solving hard problems.
And the source text leaves us with a very clear, direct challenge. It says, let's stop decorating. Let's start engineering your legacy.
Which leaves you with something to really chew on today. Imagine future archaeologists digging up the exact room you are sitting in right now, 300 million years in the future.
That's a long time.
Right. What story would your physical possessions tell them about your personal resilience? Are you surrounded by dead fish particle board that will just dissolve into the dirt? Or are you building a legacy designed to survive an ice age?